Getting a divorce in New Hampshire is actually simpler than you might think. It requires both spouses must be residents of the state when filing. The spouse filing must have been a New Hampshire resident for 1 year before filing, and the other spouse was personally served with process within the state. Or the cause of divorce arose in New Hampshire, and one of the spouses must live in New Hampshire when filing. The divorce may be filed for in a county where either spouse resides. Once the residency requirement is completed, a legal grounds for a divorce must be established. Both general and no-fault divorce are acceptable grounds for divorce. The no-fault reason is irreconcilable differences which have caused the irremediable breakdown of the marriage, when either party has seriously affected the health or endangered the reason of the other party, when either party joins a religious sect that believes marriage is unlawful. The general reasons are impotence, adultery, abandonment and not being heard of for 2 years, imprisonment with a sentence of more than 1 year served, physical abuse or reasonable apprehension of physical abuse, desertion without support of spouse by husband for 2 years, extreme cruelty, habitual intemperance, drunkenness for 2 years, living separate and apart without cohabitation for 2 years, and mental abuse. Joint legal custody is presumed to be in the best interest of the child unless there is a history of child abuse. Custody is awarded based on preference of the child if child is of appropriate age, overall welfare of the child, any findings or recommendations of a neutral mediator, and any other factors. No preference is given based on the parent's sex. Repeated and unwarranted interference by a parent with primary custody with the visitation rights of the other parent is a factor in modifying custody. Step-parents or grandparents may be granted visitation rights. The court may order reasonable support, including education for the child. Specific child support guidelines are in the statute and presumed correct unless the amount is unjust or inappropriate under the circumstances. Consideration for adjusting the amount specified in the statute are any extraordinary medical, dental, or educational expenses of the child, a significantly higher or lower income of either parent, the economic consequences of the presence of any step-parents, stepchildren, or natural or adopted children, any reasonable costs associated with physical custody, the economic consequences to either parent of the disposition of the marital home, any state or federal tax consequences, any split or shared custody arrangements, the costs of providing college educations to any natural or adopted children, and any other significant factor. The court may order health insurance as a method of support. There are also provisions for wage assignments and wage withholding to secure payment of child support. New Hampshire is an equitable distribution state. The court divides all property, including gifts, inheritances, property acquired prior to the marriage, and any retirement or pension benefits, as is equitable and just. An equal division is presumed to be equitable. Considerations specified in the statute are the length of the marriage, the age and health of the spouses, the occupation of the spouses, the vocational skills of the spouses, the employability of the spouses, the value of spouses' separate property, the amount and sources of income of the spouses, the liabilities and needs of each spouse, the opportunity of each for further acquisition of capital assets and income, the ability of the custodial parent to engage in gainful employment without interfering with the interests of any minor children in custody, the need of the custodial parent to occupy or own the marital residence and any household furnishings, the actions of either spouse during the marriage which contributed to the increase or decrease in value of any property, any significant disparity between the spouses in relation to the contribution of each spouse to the acquisition of the marital property, including the contribution of each spouse to the care and education of the children and the care and management of the home, the expectation of any retirement or pension benefits, the federal income tax consequences of the court's division of the property, any marital fault if such fault caused the breakdown of the marriage and caused pain and suffering or economic loss, the value of any property acquired prior to marriage or exchanged for property acquired prior to marriage, the value of any gifts or inheritances, any direct or indirect contribution to the education or career development of the other spouse, any interruption in education or career opportunities to benefit the other's career, the marriage, or any children, the social and economic status of each spouse, and any other relevant factor. Either spouse may be ordered to pay support to the other if the spouse in need lacks sufficient income or property to provide for reasonable needs, taking into account the standard of living during the marriage. The spouse to pay is able to meet his or her reasonable needs, taking into account the standard of living during the marriage, and the spouse in need is unable to support himself or herself at a reasonable standard of living, or is the custodian of a child whose condition or circumstances make it appropriate that the custodian not seek employment outside the home. The factors for consideration are the duration of the marriage, the age of the spouses, the physical and emotional conditions of the spouses, the vocational skills and employability of the spouse seeking support, the tax consequences to each spouse, the amount and sources of income of the spouses, the occupation of the spouses, the value of each spouse's property, the liabilities and needs of each spouse, the opportunity of each for further acquisition of capital assets and income, any marital fault if such fault caused the breakdown of the marriage and caused pain and suffering or economic loss, the contribution of each spouse to the acquisition, preservation, or appreciation in value of the marital property, including any non-economic contributions of each spouse to the family unit, and the social and economic status of each spouse. Upon request or by court order, the court may delay the divorce proceedings and order the spouses to submit to marriage counseling. Visit us today at www.mydivorcepapers.com and click on New Hampshire at the bottom of the page. Let mydivorcepapers.com help you file for divorce today.